My guest today is Peter Naylor, and we're going to be diving deep into the world of video and CTV advertising challenges and opportunities. I first met Peter almost 20 years ago when I was first starting out in digital media, and I was at a small company called Wrapped. Peter was the head of sales at a company called iVillage that focused on content for women, and he was my client. And since then, Peter has gone on to build a career as one of the true leaders in the digital advertising space. He has led sales organizations at Netflix, Snap, Hulu, and NBCU. He is a former chair of the Interactive Advertising Bureau. Peter, I am so glad that you're able to join me today to talk digital advertising.
I'm so happy to be here with the Yield Doctor himself. Those introductions always make me a little uncomfortable. So I'm just glad to catch up with you after so long, and we can talk about the video market and see where it goes.
Excellent. And you and I caught up in person last week for the first time in many years. And it's always good to reconnect with people. As I think I've talked about in previous episodes, that I love catching up with people I haven't caught up with in a long time. And you're top of that list. So thank you.
Well, it was fun walking around that conference with you because I was introducing James as the Yield Doctor, and it was a real conversation starter. So, it's good fun. Good fun.
It is good fun. So hey, let's talk about some of the definitions around video, because this is a confusing space for a lot of people, and a lot of the lingo can have lots of different meanings. There are some formats of ads that run on TV or in TV-like experiences, or we might refer to as connected TV, like Hulu or Netflix. There are some ads and some video that run on devices like PCs, where you might run against an ad on something like YouTube. Maybe it's full screen, maybe it's on your phone or tablet, maybe it's in a smaller window. And then there are video ads that are running in traditional display type environments that some would say aren't even video ads, that maybe it's just a form of rich media. And now increasingly we see video ads running on outdoor billboards and TV screens in hotels and on airplanes that would be classified as digital out of home. So when you think about all these different digital advertising experiences, what language do you use to define those different experiences?
Well, I speak through the lens of a sales side of the street, right? So keep that in mind. I'm not speaking through the buyer lens or talking or looking through a buyer lens. I mean, as a seller, particularly my experience at Hulu and then again at Netflix, we were going after TV budgets because streaming TV or OTT or streaming really does look a lot like broadcast and cable linear. You're talking full screen ads nestled within long form content that's typically professionally published. What's attractive about both conventional and streaming TV is that, it's continuous play, it's sound on, it's full screen, and those ads are typically viewed to completion. So it's really the most valuable form of video, in my opinion. Now, all TV is video, but not all video is TV. I mean, when you consider all the vertical opportunities, whether it's TikTok, Reels, YouTube Shorts, Snap Spotlight, and then you consider YouTube, I mean, that is all video, sight, sound, and motion ads, sight, sound, and motion storytelling. But then all of a sudden, a lot of variables come into play. Is it full screen? Is it audio on? Is it skippable? What's the length of the ad? So I think the buy side has their work cut out for them when they're trying to compare apples to apples, because you just can't say, oh, a video CPM is a video CPM is a video CPM. It's like it really depends on the environment. I mean, you also talked about video ads in a browser environment. I mean, personally, when I go and land on a website and there's just a video ad that's completely contextually running irrespective of the content, it's just kind of anchored to the bottom corner of your browser. It may or may not have audio, you exit out. I mean, I understand why a publisher might be deploying those ads. I think the buyer has to be careful to make sure they're giving that the proper weight and value, because that out of stream, I would call that out of stream. It's not in stream. It's not pre-roll. In order for something to be pre-roll, there's got to be a roll. You know what I mean? So I think that's questionable valuable. And then your last one, out of home, digital out of home, whether you're seeing things in like an elevator or subway or gas stations or shopping environments, whatever. I admire that the out of home world has figured out how to enable these ads and in many cases make them connected. So I think out of home is a very powerful medium. But again, it's up to the buyer to make sure they're putting the proper weighting on those ads, since, conceivably anybody with a pulse, any carbon-based life form can encounter it. So targeting becomes more geographic and things like that. So there's a big world of video options out there. And again, I've always said, I've always encountered buyers. Sorry if I'm running on. Do you want to
No. I'll push you on one thing, because I expected you to start with in roll is more valuable than out of roll. How should you, and again, when you have your sales hat on, that's not a surprising position to take given some of the companies you've represented. But how can someone think about the relative value? Is it a little bit? Is it a lot? Is it a completely different experience? If I'm a buyer trying to think about the value of in-roll versus out-roll, how do you even think about that?
I just think in-roll is more valuable because of attention. When you're engrossed in content and there's a commercial interruption where it's supposed to be, where it's, the storyteller has made a commercial break, it's not totally interruptive. When you theoretically are watching long form content and you're giving that your attention, that ad is more likely to get more of your attention. And if it's done with the right data, the right targeting, the right context, then it's more favorable attention. Again, I think out of roll has increased likelihood to be a little bit more annoying. Now, it might get attention, but remember, there's positive attention and negative attention. There's positive sentiment, negative sentiment. And I ever since I was very, very early at Hulu back in the 20 teens, I just said streaming and back then it was called OTT. Said OTT and TV are more or less the same because of all the mechanics, full screen, audio on, etc. But then I would argue streaming is actually the king of the hill because it's on demand as opposed to passively being pushed out. It's addressable. It's one-to-one as opposed to one-to-many, theoretically. And increasingly, it's a younger audience that's growing as opposed to conventional TV, which is still big, awesome audience, but it's aging and contracting. So I do rank it at the top.
So, as you know, I'm very interested in what advertisers value as a proxy for what the price should be on some of these ads. And I've previously created videos that talk about all the different attributes that a buyer might consider in digital and whether they're linked to price. And it's an overwhelmingly long list that includes the size of the ad, the environment it's shown, and the audience it's shown to, the targeting dimensions, the frequency cap. I could go on and on. I guess I'd like to hear from you. What are the top 2 or 3 things that you think that buyers are looking for in a digital video campaign? And I'm going to take one that you've already talked about, which is the attention, particularly whether it's in the stream or out of the stream. But what are the other top couple of things that you think buyers really care about?
Yeah, there's media math, right? And you talked about a lot of the media math. So I think each buyer or each agency might have their own math with some commonalities. Again, full screen, duration, clutter is a big one. Like, am I in an ad pod with 4 other advertiser, or am I one of one? That has a lot to do with attention and value. Increasingly, I think the word of the last couple years is outcomes. Buyers want outcomes. They want measurability. I think short-termism continues to be ever present. And anytime you can show how the video ad can lead to some form of measurement, buyers are going to value that. You look at a company like EDO, for example. Kevin Krim is the CEO of this video company called EDO, where they're measuring site visitation and search activity. Like, if you're a video seller, you would consider a company like that. And there's many others. So I would say outcomes is a big deal. Increasingly, brand safety and brand suitability, for a couple of years has been a big deal. Brand safety is one thing. You may or may not want to be next to war. There's a lot of people who shy away from news, and news organizations are saying, whoa, whoa, whoa. All news isn't war. Like, news is lifestyle, entertainment, weather, health and lifestyle. So there's all sorts of arguments about what is brand safe. And then again, there's brand suitability. So there's safety and suitability. So you might say that, these shows that have to do with, big dramas, they might be brand safe, but, for a brand like Pampers, is a big drama suitable? And I'm just making these examples up. So brand safety, brand suitability is next on my list there. And then I guess with the increasingly complex landscape of privacy, I'm feeling there's the pendulum swinging back to a little bit more acceptance of context as a way to really value video. And context contributes to brand safety and brand suitability, and going right back to where I started on this, outcomes. Because if you have the right ad in the right place at the right time, i.e. context, then the outcomes probably trend up as well. So those are some of the things that I think about that buyers consider.
Let's talk about the outcomes then, because let's rewind 20 years where there was much more focus on broadcast TV, and the ability to measure those outcomes was essentially zero. You had audience measurement through, Nielsen and other panels. You had potentially companies like ComScore who were also more focused on audience. We should be in an environment now where it's easier to measure the outcomes. Do you feel like the industry has matured enough that it's really there, or is this still coming?
I think it's gonna get increasingly better. And here we are. How deep are we into the conversation? Here's the first mention of AI. Okay, like AI will make things better. But 20 years ago, they did have outcomes. And the outcomes were, if I buy X 100 gross rating points, I sell more product. And they may not know directly how that magic happened, other than gross rating points on television moved that much more percentage off the shelves, or that many more seats sold, or that many more cars off the lot, or whatever. And that's why TV's always been coveted, because you make the investment, it's going to work. The funniest thing that ever happened to me was I was on a sales call with the good folks of Tyson Chicken. I don't know if they're going to be happy if I'm telling the story or not. But when I was calling on Tyson Chicken, they said, "Are you confident that this campaign is going to run in full on time as we're discussing?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." It's like, because it's really important, because we put our order in for the slaughter of the chickens based on the media buy. It's like, wow, I never knew that media was life and death, but it was life and death to the chickens. So like, we can't kill all the chickens if you're not going to create demand. They knew, getting back to your question, they knew that when they advertised, they're going to sell more chicken. And so they made the appropriate decisions about how many chickens to kill. So it works. Advertising works, and it gets increasingly more measurable as time marches on.
That is a brutal story, but it actually is a nice bridge to my next question. Ian, you've worked with the traditional TV buyers who have moved over to digital. when some of those traditional buyers who have been buying TV for decades in some cases start to buy digital, what are one thing or many things that they either get wrong or get most frustrated about when they move over to digital?
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything they're getting particularly wrong. I think they get frustrated that, we're just living in an increasingly complex world, and that's a fact of life. And I don't see it getting easier anytime soon. I think they get frustrated because it used to be you buy ABC, NBC, Fox, CBS, handful of cable networks. And again, you'd know that when you make that buy, you'd sell product. So the complexity of data, targeting, measurability, tags is frustrating. The other thing that, TV is still coveted because of its big reach. 70 of the top 10 broadcasts last year were the NFL, for example, which is why that's still coveted. But that kind of reach is not the exclusive home of TV. You look at YouTube. YouTube is massive. You look at TikTok. Advertisers been dumping money into TikTok. So they have reach there, but it's so different than the reach of conventional one-to-many TV. And so they get frustrated because it becomes clear that, wow, in an environment like TikTok, I have to have lots and lots and lots and lots of creatives. In TV, they kind of run the same thing over and over to reach their reach and frequency goals. In some of these other environments in digital video, we'll just say all digital video, one of the biggest frustrations is the lack of reach and frequency control. And that's either because walled gardens don't want to cooperate, or even the open web publishers don't want to give everything away. But that lack of frequency control, I think, is a big source of frustration, not only to buyers, but also to viewers, of course. And then the other thing probably, and then I'll stop, is in TV, there's so many major advertisers who are really interested in knowing exactly where the ad ran. It's like, yeah, I want to be in the NFL, and I know I'm going to be after the second touchdown, or I'll be in the third quarter. Like, I'm going to run in this show on broadcast or whatever. And that's important, especially when you realize, like, if you're a quick service restaurant and your advertising funds are controlled by the affiliates or the franchise owners, those franchise owners may or may not be as sophisticated as everybody in our business. And they don't understand, what do you mean I don't know when or where it ran? Like, I like to know. I like to watch the ball game and see it. And so those frustrations are ever present, I think.
Okay. All right. This is the Yield Doctor podcast. We have to talk about value, and in some sense, value aligns with pricing. So let's get specific on some advice that you might have. There are lots of potential tactics that creators or asset owners can use to make more money off their video assets. They can vary the length of the ads. They can invest in innovative formats. They can move programmatic, or the reverse. They can move fully hand sold. And while I acknowledge that there is no one size fits all, if you were working with a content owner for the first time who had a lot of video, what are the first sort of 2 or 3 things that you would work with them to think about to ensure that they were maximizing the value of their assets?
It's a great question. And I'll go with your prompt that says they have a sizable amount of inventory. If you're lucky enough to have a sizable amount of inventory, I think you have to, be prepared to be both in the programmatic as well as direct sales business. Programmatic, you can have PMPs, you can have, programmatic guaranteed deals with people. You can have you can have open exchange for just remnant inventory for backfill. So programmatic is an important part of the mix to complement your direct sales mix. I think people, we've been talking about this a long time. Nobody knows this more than the Yield Doctor, but programmatic is not automatic. And I think a lot of people think programmatic is automatic. I just plug it in and I'll just fill up my big sacks of money. That's not true. So to have a direct sales team, I think, is important. Again, considering if you have a sizable amount of inventory, to go out and create that demand, to make sure people understand who you are, what the audience looks like, what the environment is, the context, everything we've been talking about. So I think a mix of programmatic and direct sales is important. The other thing I would remind them is this is an evergreen rule. Buyers buy for their reasons, not ours, right? Buyers buy for their reasons. So that direct sales force really needs to go out there and listen to what each holding company, each marketer values, which is something we talked about earlier. What are they valuing? How are they measuring? And then how can you, with your kind of inventory, whether it's B2C, B2B, user-generated, professionally published, whatever, how do you fit in? And then you segment your sales efforts accordingly. And then, of course, you need to be prepared to provide people those measurements, those outcomes, those kind of proof of performances that the buyer or their agencies care about. And so you got to be prepared to get into the business of having relationships with a lot of ad tech and measurement providers. And part of that, of course, is being prepared to enhance your beautiful video ads with data, with targeting, with context, just enrich everything you're doing. So there's a lot to it. Programmatic, direct sales, data, measurement, and then, from a seller, the thing I can't advocate for enough is to listen to your customers, because my experience is they'll tell you what they need in order to buy you. And then it's up to you. Can you give them what they need, or, can't, or you're going to segment and go somewhere else?
Yeah. The first part of what you said, programmatic does not mean automatic, resonates so much. I spent a lot of my career educating my peers that as we moved programmatic, we actually needed more people focused on yield, on the auctions, on the private exchanges that were being set up, on all the programmatic pipes that were breaking along the way. Because you think that, you're getting away from a rate card-based selling, it should get easier. It actually gets more complex, as you're well aware.
Yes.
Peter, this has been so much fun. I hope you and I will be seeing more of each other going forward here shortly. Is there any closing thoughts or anything you'd like to leave our audience with?
I guess the one thing, it's kind of an evergreen thought, is we talk about addressability and data and targeting and measurement. Don't forget the value of the creative, right? What goes into that rectangle, that's a big deal when it comes to performance and everything. So I think sometimes we lose the forest for the trees. So if you're a publisher and you have the ability to help your marketer with the creative, then go for it. Or if you have your ability to make it shoppable or whatever, don't forget that creative is a big variable of success.
Thank you so much, Peter. Have a good rest of your day.
My pleasure.